The entry corridor is typical of crowds, sun, dust, and traffic. Therefore, my third goal is to enhance the corridor by creating more comfortable places for humans both aesthetically and environmentally. The entrance area is recognizable because of the dragon in the Dragon Plaza and the pole star in the bus wait zone. These icons help people orient themselves and establish the mood of what's to come. The bus zone is currently an unorganized area where people, bikes, motorcycles, and various demonstrations take place. As the fair closes in the evening time, thousands of people find themselves waiting in line in this area before they exit on the bus or by car. The entry corridor before and my proposed entry corridor. The entry corridor is broken up in my project into 3 major zones. The first zone is farthest west and is the place where cars, buses, and people transition from outside the fair to entering the fair. Cable Gate, or Cabal Gate, is the first security force that the public comes in contact with. In this area of junction, I designated 2 separate paths, one for pedestrians and one for vehicles. The gate itself is given a large tent and followed shortly thereafter by periodic clusters of ash trees. The idea here is to give humans more shady places to rest and to begin building a feeling of arrival. One of the most dramatic changes to happen in the active programming of this area is the creation of a new bus stop zone located north of the Indian Creek. The bus zone would be a semi-permanent tensile structure, and the area would be large enough for many hundreds of people to hang out in and around. For peoples needing direct access to the front entrance, a shuttle would be available for their assistance. For all others, their entrance to the fair would now be joined with the masses by means of a new bridge. The placement of the bridge and bus zones were the result of 3 factors. The first is the proximity between Arrow Road, an existing road, and the Nansley's bus road, which allows fluidity for a new bus route. The second factor for placing the bridge and bus turnaround here was the existing edge of the creek restoration that occurred in 2001. The third factor is simply because the distance between Chatham Bridge and Auntie M's Bridge is 775 feet, which is equivalent to 2.5 Eugene city blocks, without a break or crossing. The new bridge will increase mobility across the Indian Creek and could also activate future planning for path systems within the fair. This view is looking west. It is the location of the bridge intersecting with Chatham Path and connects the people from the bus zone to the entry corridor. The junction of the bridge and the pedestrian path will have the capacity to act as an entertainment area, a place for moving vendors, and a waiting area. In this view, you can see the aesthetic form of the new Piggy Bridge. This form is very elaborate, but the intent is to show how the bridge works rather than creating one permanent form. Both the physical structure of the culvert and the bridge panels. I wanted to make sure that I was creating a bridge that could withstand flooding, would encourage and not hinder animal and fish transport through the culvert, and would not increase erosion patterns. The culvert itself is modeled off the ones installed in 2001. They would be countersunk and boulder-filled along the bottom. Eventually, sediment from floods would settle and would encourage plants and animals to pass through. The culvert is created through a system of stair-stacked gabions that are rock and soil filled. The gabions would be planted horizontally and vertically with live willow branches. And note, the bridge fencing would be placed into sleeves that would be built into the structure. So Chatham Road as it is today, it has an experimental alley planted south of the current road. The proposed scheme for the planting is to plant them on gently sloped mounds that are approximately 2 feet higher in elevation than Chatham Road and 20 feet in circumference. The ash trees will give people the opportunity to gather, rest, and have a moment out of the sun. As well, I am proposing a series of shade structures for the entrance. The shade structures have a single arching pole that has 2 crossbeams and is covered with stretched fabric. The structures are removable and will be placed between patches of ash tree nodes. The Piggy Bridge is the starting point for the second area of focus, which is the creek restoration zone. Using the previous restoration as a precedent, the major emphasis would be on channel complexity, native riparian vegetation planting, and the eradication of invasives. However, the previous restoration only occurred on the northern slope of the creek because of the restraint of the Chatham Road to the south. This portion of the restoration would take place on both the north and the south sides of the creek in order to create wider flood storage and pooling areas. Chatham Road would be rerouted in a 200-foot segment closest to the Polestar Plaza. In order to create a meander, long oval ditches would be excavated to create places for pooling. In this section, the sides of the creek would be terraced in order to ease the slope and diminish scouring. The old road would be excavated and replaced with a mounded area and a dense planting of ash and other specified riparian plants. The riparian woodland would act as both a visual buffer of the linear path leading into the fair and would give the necessary shade for the creek below. And in this section, human-placed woody debris would be set as makeshift beaver dams. This portion of the creek is given distinct attention to width, slope, and vegetation because of a historic drainage swale that exists here. I see the existing swale as a place where water would pool naturally, and with a bit of encouragement could retain it longer throughout the year for fish and wildlife benefits. The intent of this blow-up plant sample is to give note of the vegetative form used to create shade for the proposed pooling areas below. The final zone is in the easternmost portion of the entry corridor and is the entrance into the Oregon Country Fair. As you come into the plaza, it is filled with thousands of people. The creek acts as a landscape fence to keep the crowds moving towards the entrances. On the southwest edge of the plaza, a small hill would be constructed from excavated material and appropriate soils, which creates a mound that is 80 feet in length and has a gentle 4-foot slope. This is appropriate for planting Oregon oaks above the floodplain, as well as giving a naturally shaded lounge area. 2 large admissions gates are situated here. It is important to have more than one entrance because of the number of people entering into the fair. These gates are, however, much closer together than the old entrances. I am speculating that the previous craft lot, which served as camping and parking for food and craft vendors, is now in an open field with booths and stages, and will thus accept the new influx of people. In order to keep the flow into all directions of the fair, I am using Torii gate structures to stimulate crowd movement. These gates are freestanding structures that have weighted footings and solar power LED lights mounted on them. They give the paths a visual and atmospheric threshold. At the admissions gates, oversized Torii portals would be placed amongst the trees. The vision for the entrance plaza is to function as the holding grounds for people coming and going through the admissions gates. With the bus waiting zone moved west and increased shade zones, I see this area as flexible for watching performances as well as just sitting down and people watching. Overall, I see the plan as being accomplished over a 5 to 15-year time period. The idea is to work on projects from the outside in or from the parking lots towards the entry plazas. By incorporating water quality, habitat, integrity of the site, and aesthetic value as guidelines for each zone, I believe that the dynamics of the entrance corridor study area can become more like the rest of the fair, and